Hi, I'm Rich Karlgaard, publisher of Forbes, and as part of our continuing series on CIO Next, I'm here with the CIO of Silicon Valley Bank, Beth Devon, and her colleague from England, Phil Cox, who's the head of the Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Well, congratulations on Silicon Valley Bank's huge success. You've been involved in both startups and a financial institution everybody recognizes, Charles Schwab. Talk about those two, how you brought both startup experience and a big financial institution experience together to really help Phil and his team across the world expand.
So Charles Schwab has a lot of similarities to Silicon Valley Bank in that it's a very client-focused and relationship-based culture. So I think a lot of my learning there, working with big company, working with high transaction volume systems, I think my experience at smaller startup companies has been incredibly helpful because I have more insight into what makes some of these companies tick, both the funding companies but their portfolio companies as well. So I know the speed they want to operate and how every day and every minute is just precious to the survival of their company and the type of products and services they're trying to build. So trying to bring some of that in-house to the bank, into the technology organization to find ways that we can operate quicker, more agile, be more innovative in how we leverage technology, take more risks, is a big part of the value I'm trying to bring to the organization.
It really is, Phil. I mean, congratulations on your global expansion, everything the bank has accomplished. But you do have a particular set of clients, technology clients, and in the United States and around the world and all the great tech centers. But by the very fact that they're fast-moving organizations, they're demanding clients.
They are, and of course that stresses your infrastructure from a technology perspective in that, SVB really had, US banking operations, and as we've gone outside of the US, then some of those systems have flexed and they can be used in multi-currencies and provide other products and services that our clients are needing in markets like the UK. But in other cases, we need different systems, and we need to use different technologies outside of this market here in the US. So, it's multi-dimensional, those client demands in what it really means back at base for our systems.
Let's just take Israel as an example. Enormously fruitful technology startup environment. What's it like dealing there as opposed to, say, dealing in London?
I think the businesses in Israel are more technology founded, and I think in London you'll get more consumer models and internet businesses, and of course fintech you also get in London. That is something which will be useful to cover too. But I think the real dynamic nature of the Israeli business community and the startup culture, but the migration of those businesses almost exclusively to the US. So the model of developing a technology, and as you start to build a business, getting investment and moving the sales function and often the executive management to it's often really California or New York, and building this kind of cross-border business where the technology remains often seated in Israel, is something that we as a bank have had to respond to in building a business in Israel and very close links internally then back to the US headquarters.
And that has a huge IT and communications component to it. Describe how you work with your C-level peers at Silicon Valley Bank to accomplish all that Silicon Valley Bank has accomplished.
First of all, I try to be a business professional as well and a shareholder and really act on the best interests of the company. So one of the things I pride myself on and really try to encourage my team to do is spend time in the field, spend time with Phil, get out to London, go to see what they're doing there. I call it shadowing, but actually watch them interact with a client, watch them onboard a loan, look at how they're using the systems to provide customer service. The more I know about their business and the strategies and what they're trying to accomplish, the better partner I can be to make sure I'm bringing solutions, options, guiding them on how technology can help. At the same time, we also have to act fast, and I think one thing when we stood up the UK office and got our branch license is we figured out what the minimum viable product was, the minimum footprint in technology that needed to be there to seed the setup of that office and make sure that his team was functional. But we need to work on a continuous basis, Phil and I and his colleagues, to make sure we continue that investment so that the systems can scale as the business scales and as their needs get more complex and new products are needed.
Well, there's such a broad array of challenges that a CIO faces. Everything you described on the business end, but then there's the basic blocking and tackling in IT, security systems, how much you're going to put on the cloud versus not, whether bring your own technology to work applies to a bank, which has a higher degree of regulation and financial security requirements. How do you deal with that whole mix of challenges?
You know, you just have to. You know, that's the role of the CIO. It's not for the faint of heart. I would say, you know, I love learning about what makes a business tick. I love interacting with my clients. It's fantastic to work for a company like Silicon Valley Bank where we have a great culture and we have, you know, really good purpose around the types of services and the clients that we're serving. At the same time, the blocking and tackling has to happen. I always, you know, some of the coaching that I give to my team is don't look outside for rewards and recognition for the work that you're delivering. You have to find it inside or within our team because there's so much that goes on to just run the bank, keep it secure, make sure we can scale, make sure the jobs run every day, and that's not where the glory is all the time, and yet so necessary, especially with a regulated company and everything being a moving target. You know, technology innovation is happening so fast. And some of that's not always put to good use. And so, you know, we have to stay on our toes, and I can't say we've figured it all out, but we can't stop trying.
In charge of scaling the operation globally, and at least in his part of the world, is Phil. How do you think, why do you think there's a disconnect between IT and other C-level managers in most companies? It's not been the case in Silicon Valley, but what advice do you have to other managers of global companies in working with their IT to make sure that the two are lined up and really facilitating global growth?
So I think it's always a challenge when the sales side of the business wants to run ahead of the IT capabilities of an organization. And so for me, it's really about dialogue and partnership. And you have to work really hard at that, I think. It's not easy. You know, you sometimes have differences of opinion, and I think you have to be really in a close partnership and regular dialogue to understand, from an IT perspective, the business, and the business to understand, you know, the art of the possible and the trade-offs that you often make when making key decisions.